"You should try the dumpster out back. There might be leftovers." That's what a hostess told a frail old man leaning on a cane, standing at the entrance of a restaurant he secretly owned. She didn't know. Nobody did. And what happened next would change the life of a complete stranger forever. But before we get there, you need to understand the man behind the disguise. Benny Santiago's life was never handed to him. Growing up in Aurora, Illinois, raised by a single mother earning minimum wage, he understood hunger, the kind that growls in your stomach and the kind that burns in your chest, pushing you to want more. His first job was washing dishes at a local diner. Grease under his fingernails, steam in his face, and a paycheck that barely covered bus fare. But Benny watched everything. He studied how the cooks moved, how flavors were built, how a well-timed meal could make a tired stranger smile. He worked his way up to assistant cook, then enrolled in night classes at the community college, studying business while the rest of the world slept. His first restaurant was tiny, 8 tables, a handwritten menu, and a kitchen so small 2 people could barely fit. But the food was honest, and people noticed. Within a year, there was a line out the door every Friday night. Then came the bank loan that changed everything. Benny opened a restaurant in downtown Chicago, and it exploded. Awards poured in. Top chefs competed for positions in his kitchens. 1 restaurant became 3. 3 became 7. Benny Santiago became the most respected restaurateur in the Midwest, a man who had turned dishwater hands into a dining empire. But success doesn't stop the clock. Stick with me here, because what Benny did next is something no one saw coming. Not his lawyers, not his staff, and certainly not the one person whose life he was about to change forever. As illness crept in, Benny's world shrank. Doctors spoke in careful, measured tones about getting affairs in order. The restaurants he had built with his bare hands now ran without him, managed by a corporate firm he rarely spoke to. And in the quiet of his home, surrounded by awards and newspaper clippings, the truth settled on him like dust. He was alone, no wife, no children, no family to carry forward what he had spent a lifetime building. His lawyers suggested donating everything to charity or passing the business to a mentee, but Benny shook his head. He didn't want his legacy to become a line item on someone's tax return. He wanted it in the hands of someone who understood what hunger felt like, both kinds. And then the idea hit him. Not gradually, but all at once. Like a door he had walked past 100 times suddenly swinging open. He would test them himself. Benny, dressed in threadbare clothes from a thrift store, he let his beard grow wild. He leaned on a second-hand cane and shuffled instead of walked. When he looked in the mirror, even he didn't recognize the man staring back. Good, that was the point. His first stop was the Mockingbird, one of his flagship locations. He stepped inside and barely made it past the entrance before a security guard blocked his path. "Sir, this isn't the place for you." No questions asked, no eye contact, just a firm hand pointing toward the door. At Lure, a hostess looked him up and down with thinly veiled disgust. "We have a dress code, sir," she said with a plastic smile. Then, lowering her voice as if doing him a favor, she added, "You should try the dumpster out back. There might be leftovers." Benny felt something twist in his chest. Not from his illness, but from the cruelty delivered so casually, so effortlessly, like it cost her nothing. At Cinnamon, a manager escorted him out before he could even speak, muttering something about maintaining the brand's image. 3 restaurants. 3 rejections. His own establishments, staffed by people drawing salaries from his name, turning away a man because of how he looked. He sat on a bench outside Cinnamon, hands trembling around his cane, not from the cold. From the realization that the values he had built his life on, humility, compassion, treating every person with dignity, had been quietly erased from the empire that bore his name. Maybe none of them believe what I believe, he thought. Maybe I've already lost. But there was one restaurant left. Now, if you're feeling something right now, frustration, sadness, maybe even recognition, drop a comment below. Have you ever been judged for how you looked? Have you ever been turned away from somewhere you had every right to be? Tell me your story. And make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next at this last restaurant is the part that changes everything. Bambino was different from the others. Smaller, warmer. It reminded Benny of his very first place in Aurora, the kind of restaurant where the food mattered more than the decor. This time, he didn't try the front door. He went around back and knocked on the service entrance. The door opened, and a young chef stood there, wiping his hands on a towel. "Can I get a meal here?" Benny asked. "I have money to pay." The chef studied him for a moment, not with disgust, not with pity, just seeing him, actually seeing him. "Wait here a moment," the chef said, and closed the door. Benny braced himself. He'd heard that line before. It usually meant security was on the way. But the door reopened, and the chef stepped aside. "Come in. May I ask your name?" Benny said, stepping inside. "Benjamin Flynn. I'm the head chef here." Flynn led him to a quiet table near the kitchen, not hidden away in shame, but tucked in a space that felt private and respectful. The staff brought water without being asked. The meal that arrived was extraordinary. Handmade pasta, slow-braised meat, a dessert that tasted like someone had actually cared about the person eating it. When Benny asked for the check, Flynn shook his head. "It's been taken care of." "I told you I have money," Benny said, letting irritation slip into his voice, though inside something had cracked open. "I know," Flynn said gently, "but I could tell you saved up for this. The food here is good, but honestly, the prices are steep. Hold on to your money. You might need it." Benny leaned forward. "Other restaurants turned me away tonight. Why didn't you?" Flynn's expression darkened. "That's terrible. If someone has money to pay, they deserve to eat wherever they want." He paused, then added quietly, "I let you in because I've been where you are. I was homeless for 3 years before a man I didn't know gave me a chance. A job, training, a reason to get up in the morning. I'm here because someone saw me when nobody else did." "And now you're the head chef at one of the best restaurants in town," Benny said. Flynn smiled. "It's a dream, honestly. The man who built this place. I've never met him, but I admire what he created. Someday, I want to open my own restaurant. A place where everyone feels welcome. Suits or no suits, money or no money." Benny said nothing for a long moment. Then he stood slowly, placed a sealed envelope on the table, and looked Flynn in the eye. "Thank you, son, for everything." Flynn watched the old man disappear into the evening. When waitress Wendy opened the envelope minutes later, her hands trembled. Inside, $1,000 in cash and a handwritten note with a single line. "This is just the beginning." Flynn wanted to chase him down. He ran outside, scanning the empty street. The man was gone. So Flynn did the only thing that felt right. He split the money with his entire staff that night. 3 months later, Benny Santiago passed away quietly in his home. Flynn saw the news on television, a tribute segment showing photos of the legendary restaurateur. Young Benny, bright-eyed and proud, standing in front of his first tiny restaurant. Older Benny, distinguished, shaking hands with mayors and food critics. And then a recent photo. Those eyes. Flynn froze. He knew those eyes. He had looked into them across a quiet table near the kitchen at Bambino. 1 week later, a lawyer's letter arrived. Inside, Benny had written everything. The disguise, the test, the rejections, and the one man who had passed. But it didn't stop there. Benny revealed that after their meeting, he had quietly investigated Flynn's background, his years of homelessness, his culinary training, his spotless record, the way his staff spoke about him when he wasn't in the room. The letter ended with this: "I'm leaving you my restaurants, all of them. Not because of one meal, but because of who you are when no one important is watching. I spent my whole life building something from nothing. Now I'm trusting you to protect what matters most. Not the brand, not the money, but the belief that every person who walks through our doors deserves to be seen. I hope you're up to the challenge. Your food is excellent. But now comes the hard part. Good luck, chef." Flynn sat alone in the kitchen where it all began, the letter shaking in his hands, tears rolling freely down his face. He whispered 2 words that felt simultaneously too small, and the only words that mattered: "Thank you." Benny Santiago built an empire from nothing. But his greatest act wasn't building restaurants. It was choosing the right heart to carry them forward. Now it's your turn. What would you have done in Flynn's position? Have you ever witnessed a small act of kindness that changed someone's life? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Sometimes the people who deserve the most are the ones the world notices the least.